This podcast is sponsored by Kulabola, creators of websites, animation, and digital art. To get a 10% discount, go to kulabola.com and put in the discount code MEDITATION. Welcome to the Meditation Podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org. We're also on Facebook as meditation.org. I also have the Awakening Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, and the Speaking Podcast, and all can be found on roycollin.com. Today, my guest, very interesting. I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's a kind of alchemist, we can say, author, and a lot of other things. Please welcome Adora Winquist.
Thank you so much, Roy. It's a true pleasure to be here with you today.
So I suppose the best thing is you might introduce yourself to the audience so they know who they're going to be listening to.
Absolutely. So what I would say about myself as a modern alchemist, I think that this is a phrase that really is getting a lot of engagement these days. People are curious. What is a modern alchemist? What is alchemy? So I think starting there is a really great place. And then we can talk about quantum alchemy as well, and so many other wonderful aspects of the work and the work of awakening. And ultimately, just to start off, my mission is really supporting humanity to awaken to the spark of divinity and sovereignty that exists within all of us. Right? And how we can use ancient philosophy and alchemies of the natural world to help support our awakening, our remembrance, our healing, right? Healing from any and all aspects of trauma, not just what we've carried in this life and at the soul level, but also within our DNA and our family lineage and heritage, and how essential oils and how crystals and how meditation and how connecting with nature is such an integral part of our awakening and the expansion of our consciousness. So to come back and look at alchemy, well, what does that really mean? Because a lot of people think alchemy, okay, it's an ancient tradition of turning base metals into gold. But when I speak of alchemy, it's really about excavating that quintessence, that unique light and set of gifts that only we have to bring to the world, right? And that process is a lifelong journey. And it's really the alchemy of the soul. And how can we not only find a deeper place of communion within ourselves and a vast amount of healing, which of course accelerates our awakening. It accelerates our understanding of who we are and why we're here in the world. And ultimately, once we move through our own healing spiral, and like what I like to call the tipping point of bringing balance to our masculine aspect, our feminine aspect, and any unresolved child consciousness, well, then we can really begin to embody our soul purpose and bring that light and set of gifts that are encoded within our DNA, that are encoded within our soul, that are encoded deep within our consciousness, to bring those to the world for the greater good of all. So alchemy from that perspective is really why I say that your soul work is your soul work, because there are things that you have brought into this life that only you can contribute to the world as a whole. And so what happens as we deepen our own understanding of ourselves and our healing journey and what's been carried through our DNA, our lineage, at the level of belief system, right? At the level of trauma, of emotions, of thought processes and images. Once we're able to move through those areas and have a deeper understanding of ourselves, then that's when we can really bring our light to not only illuminate our path, but the path of others as well, as they're finding their own truth, their own authenticity, their own empowerment, right? And to be able to move into a state of being where we move through what I like to call the survive to thrive, based on Maslow's hierarchy, right? The pyramid or triangle that we all know the base level is survival and struggle, right? And we've all experienced that to some degree. But ultimately, we're all here to walk the path of self-mastery. We're just at different levels or stages of that spiral of awakening.
What I like actually is when you see somebody that's kind of gone through the journey. I think we've all gone through, we've been slapped left, right, and center. But when you see somebody, if you call it waking up or just enlightenment, they don't go backwards. And that's what's kind of, there's a lot of doom and gloom at the moment, a lot of people in fear. But the reality is there's a lot of people that have actually they've made a transition in the last 2 years. I think it's actually helped a lot of people to realize there's so much kind of corruption and evil going on that they've kind of looked inside.
Yeah, and I think that is why we have such a unique opportunity right now at this juncture of time and space, and this great awakening on Mother Earth, that we have this opportunity to quantum leap along our own journey of healing, awakening, and expansion of our consciousness. Because ultimately, when we bring the focus inward, which is what we are collectively being called to do right now, we're able to say, okay, am I living my best life? Is my life filled with passion and purpose, right? Am I experiencing the fullness of my essence, right? My divinity, or even my physical vibrancy and vitality? And so as we start to ask ourselves these questions, I think that one of the biggest words for me of the past 2 years is patterning, right? Where do we hold subconscious patterns that are inhibiting us in some form or fashion from living our best life? Whether that's in our relationships, our health and vibrancy, our bank account, what we're able to contribute to the world for the benevolence of all of humanity, or all of the kingdoms of life. What are the areas that we are called to bring our awareness and the light of divine consciousness to for transformation? Because ultimately, it's kind of similar to that statement of Gandhi, right? About being the change that we long to see. And of course, I'm paraphrasing, but any of those patterns that are unresolved within us are still projecting distortion in some way, need to be cleared for us to really embody the truth of who we are. And as we heal on an individual basis, what happens, right? When we move through a very deep level of healing of some trauma that we carry, our life force floods our system. We're able to emanate and embody greater levels of light, clarity, vibrancy, abundance, prosperity, strength, right? And that affects every decision that we make, every move that we make, every breath we take, every step that we take in the world. And so as we shift that within us, we know that that shifts everything around us, including our core relationships. But it's even so much more vast than that, because ultimately, when we clear a core level trauma, that shifts at our level of the soul, and then also within our soul family group, right? That energy is imprinted and cleared vibrationally. And then ultimately, it's imprinted on the web of humanity. And then all of the consciousness of humanity elevates, right? If you've heard of the 100 monkey phenomenon, have you? I love that so much, right?
Yeah,
and
it's fat. We were actually only taught. I'm in a mastermind group, and I'd heard it before, but we actually discussed it yesterday.
Really?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's basically they were washing the sweet potatoes. Yeah.
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 Right. So ultimately, as a species, when a certain number, whether it's 100 exactly, or approximately 100 beings or mammals, or I would even say for all of the kingdoms of life on the planet, whether it's the animal kingdom or the human kingdom or the mineral kingdom or the plant kingdom, once that tipping point has been reached, then the entire species gets the download of that new skill, that new energy, that new vibration. And to me, that is such a reminder of the potential that we have within us. And that in this one particular life, that we can harness the power of the present moment, our positive intention, that we can work with things like essential oils to support the repatterning at the neural level, that we can work with crystals that have frequency to heal and activate and balance and awaken at the cellular level, that we can work with meditation, that we can work with things like affirmation, because, studies have shown that our DNA is malleable to language, right? And so what is language? Language is intention with form, right? So we have this incredible opportunity to literally revolutionize not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us. And I think that that's our such a big part of our purpose from an evolutionary perspective.
You mentioned the affirmations, like on the opposite side of the spectrum. Like I was discussing it with somebody today. Like I know a few people, and they keep saying, "Oh I never have good luck. And there's so many bad things that come into, and it's like they're talking about it, they're attracting it instead of thinking the opposite, thinking the positive, thinking what they want in their life. They look on the negative, like we create the world that we want.
It's so true. And so let's even go a layer beneath that, because when we see, when we're presented with someone who has perpetual negative thinking and negative speaking, what's underneath that? Right. And what's underneath that are those subconscious patterns and core level cellular DNA belief systems of that energy. Right. And so even if we're able to say, well, I'm going to retrain my mind, I'm going to think differently, I'm going to speak differently. But if we're still having the same energy consciousness at the cellular level, the same distortion will continue to perpetuate until it's cleared, right? Viscerally, right? And that is also, I think, one of the most wonderful gifts that we have, to literally transform the energy at the level of our DNA, at the level of our lineage, for all of our ancestors that have carried whatever type of pain or distortion or trauma, right? And I love that you shared that you are from Ireland, and in fact from Cork, right? I've actually been there twice. Well, the first time was when I was very young to visit some family. But it's very interesting when we look at even the locations and the energy consciousness of our heritage, because we can see what belief systems and what traumas from a collective perspective have been carried through our DNA. Right. And so that work to me is so profound, because we are able to transform at that core level, at that DNA level, and create completely new relationships with ourselves, with our own energy consciousness, and then with future generations to come.
Absolutely. And just like, because I'd like to go into kind of the healing side of things, because especially now a lot of people are going through stress. They're worried about their jobs. I mean, I believe there's going to be increases in the mortgages, the interest rates are going to go up, so there's going to be a lot of stress going on with like essential oils and vibrations and the stones and everything. Like, you might go through each one and how it's done, because like if we start with, say, the essential oils, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because I was looking at your site and I see all the ingredients and everything, what you're doing, so I know you know exactly what you're talking about. But sometimes people go away and they buy in the shop essential oils for, say, $2, and they're probably doing more damage than anything, because there's toxins in these things.
That is such an important point. I really appreciate you bringing that up, Roy. So let's look at both sides of the spectrum, right? From one perspective, essential oils in their pure form, their undiluted, unadulterated form, are the most potent aspect of plant medicine. They are biochemically active. They're also vibrationally active. So from the biochemical perspective, they carry chemical constituents, sometimes 100 or more, sometimes up to 300 chemical constituents in each drop, right, of a small bottle of oil. And so when we look at this from a chemical perspective, let's take lavender, for example. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of lavender. Lavender's two main chemical components, linalool and linalool acetate, are the reason that lavender has such a calming, relaxing effect, right, on the nervous system because it is a nervine. Those chemical components are nervine in nature. So if we look at the perspective of a pure essential oil being biochemically active and then also vibrationally active, because it carries the quintessence, the essence, the life force, the vibrational patterning of the plant as well. And those plants and those minerals were placed here to support our own process of healing, awakening, and remembering unity consciousness. Now, that seems like a really profound form of medicine, right? Something that is chemically and vibrationally active. Yet, if you have something that is synthetic in nature, it's certainly not going to have those benefits. And because adulteration, where an essential oil is cut and stretched and chemicals are added to it, so you have more volume, then just like you said, it can be more harmful than helpful. And so this is where we look at the process of creating essential oils, because in this regard, we're really in partnership with Mother Nature. There's only so many plants that are grown each year to produce an essential oil. And over 90% of those are produced for the flavor and fragrance industry. So when we look at aromatherapy and the huge increase, especially over the past 2 years, of essential oils becoming more well known for the fact that some of them are strongly antiviral in nature, antimicrobial, antibacterial, like cinnamon cassia. Now, also cinnamon, it's a field where context and education are so important because there are different types of cinnamon leaf versus the bark. The bark can be more toxic. So we really need to know not only the Latin name of the plant, where the plant comes from, the essential oil, how it's produced, and then we need to know our suppliers, because if we don't have relationship at the level where the oil is grown and distilled, right, harvested and processed, then think about all of the points in between from that moment before it becomes a product that's on your shelf at your health food store or with your vendor, right? So many different points where the essential oil is cut and stretched and adulterated because there is such a huge demand, especially from the past couple of years. So I always say, and there's a tremendous amount of information on my blog about this, articles that I've written, you really want to know your source. You want to build relationship with the essential oils so you can begin to understand what's quality and what's not. In my own journey of working with the oils for over 20 years, in the very beginning, I had no idea. I started first with herbalism. I started with herbs from making an herbal tea when I was in my late teens because I had moved away from home and I didn't have health insurance and I didn't have a lot of money. And every year I would get really bad bronchitis brought about from allergies. And somewhere I heard something about herbalism. So I went and bought a book and 5 different herbs and made a tea and was amazed by how quickly I healed. And not only that, that I haven't had bronchitis since then, which is remarkable for someone who spent most of their life up until that date very, very sickly. And so, in fact, that recipe is in my book too, my new book that came out in July. For those that are interested, I think it's also on my blog as well, for those that do have respiratory complaints. But working with the herbs is what ultimately brought me to work with essential oils. Now, when I first started, I found some oils and these said, okay, these are pure essential oils. Wonderful. Well, because this field isn't regulated and people can essentially say whatever they'd like about a product, those oils were fragrance oils. They weren't even pure plant oils. And yet the packaging said pure and natural. So how do we as a consumer really begin to educate ourselves and build our own lexicon of what quality is, of what purity is? And how do we do that in a way that doesn't take 20 years and thousands and thousands of dollars, right? And so that's why those of us that are in the field educating and sharing, like, here's what to look for. Here are very important context of safety, because Just because something is natural does not mean that it's safe.
Yeah, there's
So
so many
that's certainly
loopholes. There's loopholes where they have one little ingredient that's natural. It could be 1%, and they get to put natural on the package.
right.
I use an app, and it's mainly for food, but I can check soaps and different things. And the amount of
Yes.
times I'd look at something and it says natural, and it's the most toxic thing you can get. And you're like, how many people are constantly fooled and lied to? And like, people now think that the government have their best interest at heart. This is orchestrated throughout the world to, make people sick. And like you mentioned about bronchitis, I was sick. I had asthma when I was younger and everything. All these inhalers and everything, all the stuff that they give, all the pharmaceuticals are all toxins, and they actually try to mimic natural stuff so that they can make money from it. And will a doctor tell you to take such and such a natural ingredient? No, he'll actually prescribe something with all the oils that's in it. And I don't mean natural oils, I mean chemical oils, which in turn is putting toxins into your body. And then you're getting a side effect. And then he has the next pill for you to make your, so-called better, which does never happen.
It's so true. It's so true. I can remember I had an acute health crisis also in my late teens, early 20s with endometriosis. And at that time, that disease process was not very well known. And my doctor was very comfortable continuing to write scripts for opioids and say, well, this pain is just in your head. You're a woman, you're born to suffer. I mean, things that are really incredulous today to imagine hearing. But when we feel ill, and whether that's physically, whether that's psychospiritually, right, emotionally, mentally, we are not living from a place of empowerment. And when we're not empowered and we don't feel empowered, we don't make decisions that serve our best and highest good. And whenever we put the responsibility for our well-being outside of ourselves to someone else, we are always coming from that place of disempowerment. And so I believe that is one of the gifts of the past couple of years, where people have said, okay, when I have to ask myself some of these very difficult questions and bring my focus inward and ask myself, am I really taking care of myself? Who's running my life? Right? Is it my physician? Is it my spouse? Is it my parents? Is it my boss? Right? Is it my community, or is it something from media? Is it my social media feed? Is it the mainstream media, right? On the television or the radio? And so here, to me, is really the point of pivot, to take back our power from all of those external sources and bring it back inside of us. And that's where we can remember that we are incredibly powerful and incredibly wise, and that we do have everything that we need within us to heal at the most profound level. That within us and the interventions and relationships and organizations that honor our highest path of health and vibrant, authentic expression.
Absolutely. And I've had a lot of companies over the years, and I like dealing with accountants. I always thought I was able to study this book and kind of go, can I do this? Can I do that? And it's like, they don't really have my best interests at heart. I found the same with solicitors. They're just chugging through. They get paid no matter what. But you go, say this, say that, say this. You're basically protecting yourself. And it's the exact same with doctors. If you think your doctor is your best friend, has your interest at heart, you'll know as soon as you go into the room, the doctor's surgery, you're sitting down and the prescription is nearly ready and you have to leave within 5 minutes. So like, you have to look after your own health. These people, unfortunately, they're loyal to the dollar instead of, it's a sickness industry instead of a wellness industry.
Yes. And instead of one of prevention, right? Yeah. Where do we come back to that place of communion with ourselves, that we honor our bodies as temples that hold the light of our spirit and soul? right? And to me, that is the place, that is the calling. And so everyone's road to get there is going to look a little bit different, because we're all here. What I may be here for on a soul level can be very different than what you're here to learn, to experience, to express, to grow into, to let go of, right? To embody and to emanate. And so surrounding ourselves with people of like mind or similar vibration, if you will, is imperative for us to be able to break through those glass ceilings of belief system that we experienced in our younger, and in particular, our early childhood dynamics. And there's one thing that I like to say is that we all have a treasure map, right? We have a treasure map from our childhood based on our family constellations. Now, it certainly may not look like a treasure map, right? Because we've all experienced adversity to some degree, or some level of trauma, whether it's perceived or actual, because perception is 9/10 of our reality, right? So when we're able to look at those places of patterning that we hold in this treasure map, we really can see what we've come into this life to be able to heal and grow and experience. Now, of course, for those of us that believe in reincarnation and past lives, even still, our early childhood treasure map has seeds of all of that, because they're threads, right? Though anything unresolved from a previous life, we bring in and seed in our early childhood, so that we can come to a greater understanding of who we are and why we're here. And our family of origin helps us to create the perfect, although certainly imperfect, set of conditions for that to rise within us.
And with the crystals, then, like, that's through a frequency as well. You put the crystals on certain parts of the body. Is that how that's works?
Yeah, well, there's so many different ways. And for those of your listeners that really enjoy working with crystals, my book has everything from how to cleanse and clear and activate your crystals, how you can use them to imprint into the frequency of your water, that when you're drinking that, you're receiving that down to the cellular level, for clearing, for activation, for awakening. We have, I was in New Jersey doing Akashic record readings last month. And so I had a very busy schedule and not a lot of time in between clients. And so this was one of the crystals at the shop. And I said, I'm really going to have this in next to me in my healing room to help support my energy and to keep my vibration high. Because when you're doing Akashic record reading, you're not just going into someone's past lives, you're kind of moving between timelines and dimensions, right? And so it's intense from the perspective of our vital life force. But allies from the crystal kingdom, because they have such a strong vibration, help to keep the frequency high, whether it's around us, like this now is in my office. I decided to purchase it at the end of my day and bring it home. But they help to create frequency in your personal environment. So you can either have a grid that's maybe in your area of intentional practice for a specific intention that you'd like to materialize, because the crystals have different, just like essential oils, just like humans, right? We have different gifts that correlate and align with different parts of our soul and emotional, psychospiritual, and physiological expression and need for healing. In addition to that, you can use crystal grids around the body. Now, one of my favorites, and I found this during my early time of awakening when I was just really finding essential oils and vibrational healing and studying Reiki back in the mid 90s. And so this is a crystal grid that you can get 6 pieces of single terminated quartz. I don't have any right here, but single terminated, meaning 1 point. And you make a grid around yourself. And so it's called the Star of David grid. And so if you were sitting up for meditation, you would have at each knee a point pointing in from the single terminated crystal. You'd make a kind of Star of David grid around yourself. And this is a wonderful way to accelerate your awakening process, accelerate your spiritual growth, your remembrance, if you will, because I believe that it's not necessarily that we're learning anything new. We're opening ourselves to remember the truth of who we are and all of that ancient wisdom and divine knowledge that's held within us, that's held within our DNA, that's held within our cells, that's held, of course, then holographically through our energy field. Right. And so working with the crystals and meditation really is much more expedient and deepens the process. And so I am a huge proponent of working with the crystals as well as the essential oils. Now, a couple of things, like I lead a few complementary meditations every month. One is weekly. And then there's a one or two more that are monthly as well, and they're via Zoom, so people from all over the world can come and do. But for each one, I include one crystal and one essential oil. And then we work with that energy consciousness to be based on or aligned with the intention for the meditation. And so the great thing is that even though I'm speaking about the essential oil and what those benefits are and why you'd want to use it for this type of meditation, and the same goes for the crystal, we also work with the cosmic consciousness and the vital life force of the plant and the mineral. So people, even if you don't have the oil or the crystal, still get a cellular visual experience from the vibrational perspective. And I really believe that this is going to be one of the ways in the future that we work with the plants and the minerals to expedite our awakening and our consciousness, even if we don't have the tangible biochemical aspects with us.
And with the crystals, then, is it similar to the oils where you've got a lot of stuff that's fake? Is it like, how does somebody know when they're purchasing a crystal? How is there a way of determining you're not buying junk?
Yeah, I think, as with everything in life, first we have an invitation, right? It's an invitation to ourselves. What is that invitation? The invitation can be, I want to experience betterment in every area of my life. It can be general, or I want to experience the powerful alchemical aspects of healing from the crystal kingdom or from the essential oil kingdom. So that's an invitation, right? And then we have an intention. Okay, so my intention is I'd like to, and this is where we get a little bit more specific, still a bit general, but a bit more specific as well. So, okay, I would like to receive information and connection to an essential oil or a crystal that is going to be energizing, that's going to help me increase my vital life force, right? And so then we're putting out that intention to the universe. And so what happens? Because we live in a benevolent universe, because we're powerful divine beings of light and sovereignty, then from a universal perspective, people begin to come into contact with us. Resources, companies, like just a bit of guidance will show up, right? Someone, somehow, some way might say to you, oh, have you heard about this oil? I heard that it was really good for this purpose. And you're like, well, that's so strange. I was just having an intention about that for myself. And so this level of synchronicity is actually natural, right? When we align ourselves to be in a place of flow. So I think that it really comes back to having that deeper connection with ourselves. And then we say, oh gosh, somehow I ended up at this crystal store and there is this beautiful piece of azumar. And I've never seen this before, but for some reason I'm really drawn to it. So I'm going to listen to my intuition and I'm going to purchase it and bring it home, even if I don't know exactly how to use it just yet. Right? That's where we're really opening ourselves to the benevolent direction from source and the source that is within us. And so, you know, from the perspective of something being kind of pretty or shiny, some people really like polished stones. Like I have some polished bloodstone here, which I really like. And I also like a lot of raw stones as well. This is pink calcite, which is raw. And pink calcite is such a beautiful stone for connecting with areas of gentleness, of self-love, of self-forgiveness in particular. The the bloodstone, wonderful for working with increasing our vital life force, like I just mentioned, especially with the adrenal system. So there are a couple of grids that are in my book that talk about how you can place these crystals on the body to activate that aspect of vital life force and strength within yourself as well.
Excellent, excellent. And the meditation then, like, because I've seen some of the meditation on the YouTube channel, but you might, but you, because the music is nice. I like the music that you have in the background, because you know some people don't have that, but I like when there's music. But you might tell people what kind of meditation that you're doing.
Absolutely. So I have always loved doing meditation. In fact, the very first one, I can still remember the first one that I led, which was on a trip in Egypt. I was part of the Rosicrucian organization at the time, which is a mystery school that teaches esoteric philosophy. And one of the women said, "We would love it if you would share some of your wisdom on the chakras and lead a meditation." And I can remember feeling this sense of butterflies in my stomach with this excitement. And so what I have come to realize over the 20 plus years of leading these meditations is that it is perhaps one of the most effortless aspects of my work, because creating sacred space and allowing spirit to come through and directing the meditation is incredibly liberating. And so for each one, I start with an intention. Like right now, we're doing a new program. This week will be the third week in the Survive to Thrive theory series. And so where I mentioned that triangle based on Maslow's hierarchy, where we start at the bottom with survival and struggle, and then each week we move up that pathway of self-mastery. And so I always talk about one essential oil and one crystal that help to support the anchoring of the energy in the meditation. And then from that perspective, I move into an energy of allowance. And in fact, you know, before the meditation, I'm not exactly sure what's going to come through ever, which used to be really a bit terrifying. In the early days when I started, right? Open mouth and something will come out. Well, what is going to come out exactly? So it's taken a lot of deepening and trusting of myself in the process. But what I've experienced is that it creates a profound container, vibrational container, where people have really incredible depth of experiences. And can experience them down to that cellular level. And so I definitely acknowledge it as one of the facets of my own soul purpose and bringing the meditations in this way. And so really what people can experience is something that is shifting not only through their energy consciousness, but moving down to the level of the DNA, because we have so much light, so many gifts held there. And at the same time, so many aspects that we've carried into this life to be able to transform and transmute. And so meditations last anywhere from 20 minutes. It will be one on this Sunday that I do in conjunction with the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, of which I'm a graduate and instructor for their Hands of Light program. And it's really the premier school globally that teaches vibrational healing in a 4-year degree setting through the human energy field, with a focus on psychodynamics to make sure that it's really rooted, grounded, right? Which is so important. And so I would say that my meditations are really similar to the core of my work. They have 3 pillars: the esoteric philosophy, the psychospiritual dynamics, and the plant and vibrational medicine. But the one that I mentioned on this Sunday, the 16th, is going to be, I'll lead it for the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. So usually we get like about 100 to 150 people that come on that call, which is really wonderful because, you know, we're creating group container, group intention, group hara, right? And being able to strengthen the light work in the world in a really beautiful way.
Excellent, excellent. And like you might have mentioned it there, the Akashia record
Oh, the
reading.
Akashic records.
Yeah.
Yes. So, my first trip to Egypt a little over 20 years ago, I had this experience at the Great Pyramid and the Sphinx, where I started to see this kind of etheric hall of records underneath and yet around this area. And how, essentially every soul has a record, right? In this etheric Akasha. And so when we're able to access this information, it becomes a really profound way for people to understand, oh, so this is what I've carried into this life, to be able to understand more deeply at the soul level, and to be able to liberate myself and assimilate the great wisdom that's held here. And then also to be able to access aspects of wisdom and divine knowledge that are held within us at the DNA level, at the cellular level, and at the soul level, that we have already achieved mastery in different lifetimes. And yet sometimes we're not able to access those gifts again until we come to a certain level of understanding of where we are at this juncture in this lifetime, right? So when we're able to open to receive that, then we can also access those great skills, or what I like to say, divine attributes, ultimately, that we have achieved mastery in a different lifetime expression. So even though, interestingly, my work over the past 20 plus years as a healer has always had some past life component, but it wasn't until 2020 that I actually added this service, to specifically Akashic record reading, to my platform. And it came about in a really interesting way with one of my mentors who also attended the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, gifted me this book by Roberta Herzog and said, take a read, let me know what you think. She was, I guess, a pretty famous Akashic record reader and author a couple of decades ago. She passed away a little over 10 years ago. And when I was reading it, I had this experience that this golden light came into the room and just popped open. And as I was sharing this with him, he said, well, that's the confirmation I was looking for. I felt that the legacy of Roberta Herzog was to go to you, and from the perspective of her client base and her website and so forth. And I'd like to know if that's something that you would like to receive and work with. And of course, I was incredibly honored. And that's when it became part of my offering. And it's probably one of the most popular aspects of my work, those readings at this point. I think because of this incredible calling that we all feel within us to awaken to our soul purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Finally, with the book then, so you might just kind of tell us what's covered in the book. Actually, we didn't even mention the name. What is it? Detox, nourish, activate, plant and vibrational medicine for energy. What is it? Mood and love. Yeah.
Yes, it's co-authored with my ally with the plants, Dr. Lulu Shemek, who's a naturopath. And as we were deciding to write this book, we really looked at some of these questions that our clients brought. Why do I keep having these same patterns pop up in my life? Like, I don't want to live like this, but why am I having this health challenge? Why are my relationships? Where is this patterning of dysfunction coming from? Or why don't I see the amount of money in my bank account, right? Or why am I still carrying the pain of the past? So in thinking about that, we created this system, 3-step system to detox, nourish, activate, and how we can heal at the DNA level to truly embody our path of self-mastery, to truly embody our soul purpose in this lifetime. And it goes in conjunction with 3 systems. So energy connects with the adrenal system, which connects with our root chakra and our connection to the earth, and all of the belief systems and energy consciousness that's held there. And then, of course, the heart connecting to love, our cardiovascular system, but also This is where we connect on a relational level, right? With all of our relationships, and then mood, connecting to the brain and nervous system. And of course, the connection of the crown chakra to the energy of divine consciousness. And so, how we can holistically, through working with 11 different types of interventions, from essential oils, herbs, crystals, meditation, of course, nutrition, and all of these aspects of alchemy to detox, nourish, and activate. Because ultimately, like, let's say you have an infinite amount of money right now to go to the health food store and get every single thing that you know is going to take really good care of your body. So everything from food, nutrition, supplements, water, herbs, teas. The same emotionally, right? Your essential oils, your books, everything from a spiritual perspective too, right? Again, your crystals, or philosophies on a deeper understanding of divine consciousness. And so let's say you take them home and you open the door to your house, and your house is in disarray. It is clutter upon clutter. You open your refrigerator is also cluttered, and you've got food that's rotting in there. Well, what's going to happen if you put all of that fresh food in? A, there's no room for it, but B, because you've got bacterial breakdown, the food that you put in is going to break down even more quickly, right, than if your fridge was empty. So we have to detox, we have to clear, cleanse, purify everything from our physical habits of diet and exercise and nutrition to our emotional and psychological and spiritual connections too, right? How can we open ourselves to deeper intimacy and love if we're carrying the heartache and the pain of past betrayal and grief and loss and disappointment? So, and that really comes back to the person that you were mentioning that was saying all of these negative things, right? The worst things always happen to me. Well, why is that? It's because when we carry the pain of the past on some level, even if it's subconscious, we believe that those aspects of distortion or dysfunction or sadness are going to keep perpetuating until we free ourselves from them. So then we come into the nourish aspect, right? Deep levels of self-care, really caring for ourselves first and foremost before we move into the activate phase, which is, okay, I'm going to harness the full power of my vital life force and strength, which is increased now, to be able to live the life of my dreams, to be able to embody my soul purpose, to really do and be what I've come here to do and be and experience.
And like when you look at, you mentioned the fridge and everything, but I find with me that once everything is in its place, it's, once you've got it's organized, all your stuff organized, you get so much more productive. You're just in flow, whereas if everything is all over the place, it just bamboozles you, and it just makes you not want to do anything. So it's, you must, like, I love what your book is about, to be honest, which I think it's something everybody should look at, because even like the vibrations, say the Spooky 2, one of the devices that I've got, it's a frequency device. Like, we're all electrical beings, and the frequency. So I know some people might listen to this and go, yeah, this is woo woo. But the reality is, if you know that everything vibrates, even gold vibrates, everything has a vibration, and all our cells are vibrating. So if you just think of it like that, then you'll understand why the essential oils and why, the crystals, everything has, a benefit for us in life.
That's so true. I love what you said about being bamboozled by chaos in your space, because it is so true. I'm constantly trying to talk to my 12-year-old about that. But, it's for those that say, well, this is really woo-woo. I think that comes from just missing some information, because if you actually look back, all of these ancient traditions are rooted not only in physics, but in science and also general knowledge. If you look back to the pharmacopoeia and the texts back from the early 1900s, they talk about herbs, they talk about homeopathy. Right? They talk about these types of plant medicine that were commonly used. And this is where we have to really say, am I going to trust what big pharma is telling me about medicine? Or maybe am I going to step back a bit and do some of my own research and see what historically has been used through the ages? And I'm not saying that every intervention was spot on back then, but I'm saying if we go back and do our research, and even looking at the immense amount of scientific research on essential oils and even crystals and even vibration and even meditation, right? And affirmations. And there's a whole world of information that we can begin to educate ourselves and open our minds, open our beings, open our hearts to what may be a new experience and expression of truth.
Absolutely. And like, you mentioned the pharma, big pharma, like the opioids that we discussed, like Johnson & Johnson, who a lot of people are rolling up their sleeves in trust of that company, were fined $25 billion for opioids because it was actually addictive and they pretended it wasn't. So like, just buyer beware, just think of what's going on in the world, and don't be letting your government or your doctor control your health. Control it yourself.
It's so true. I'm working on this new course content. I'm launching my school this year called the Soul Institute, and working on this course around curating our environment. And to do that is how we can co-create our highest experience of reality, which means there are moments where we really need to take either the remote and turn it off or hop off the feeds on the social media, which are really targeted to shifting our thought philosophy and really think about things in a different way. I also have another project called Crystal Raven. It's a pen name. And it's my author pen name for a collection of erotic science fiction books that actually have, even though they seem like they're written, or when the project, when we started, it seemed like they were written far more in the future, talking about authoritarian rule, are so germane today with the themes that are in there. So if you have readers or listeners to your program that enjoy that genre from a fictional perspective, there's some great themes and really clear current day correlates regarding our freedoms that are in the book, and it's a really fun read too.
Excellent. Listen, Adora, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. How can people get in contact with you?
Sure. So my website is adorawinquist.com. And if you want to join our quantum community, you can sign up for our newsletter that talks about all of the events that are happening, both the weekly, the complimentary events, complimentary content on Instagram and our other social platforms. Also our retreat programs. We have another retreat coming up in September in France. This is our second retreat of the Divine Feminine, following in the footsteps of Mary Magdalene. And then we also have a wonderful Divine Feminine retreat here in North Carolina happening in 2022. So if you join our community, I produce a lot of content and empowering ways that you can work with alchemy to not only heal, but inspire and awaken yourself to live your very best life, and to engage with others that are like-minded, which is so important, I think, for us right now as well. Then my other platform is crystalraven.com, and that's where you can find out about the Virtual Mirrors series that's written from the perspective of Gemma, an empowered female. And one last thing I just have to share, Roy, the name for the heroine in that book, Gemma, came from my very first trip to Ireland when I was in the area of Cork and made a friend, and her name was Gemma, and we became pen pals for a while. But it was such a beautiful experience and memory, and that's why Gem is named Gem.
Nice. Excellent. Oh, perfect. So as I mentioned before we start recording, because I want to put this on not only the meditation podcast, but I'm going to share it on the awakening, because I believe health is the most important thing. I mean, I'm exposing a lot of stuff, but at the same time, I believe in solutions. And that's why I think, to know what to do, because when you have the right health, you have the right mentality, and then you're able to fight the corruption 10 times better. And I mean, even just looking at you, because I remember going through your website and I was going, wow, this woman is superwoman. Look at all the things that she's doing. But that's what I've noticed that when you meet kind of like-minded people, they're all doing amazing things. Whereas the people that are complaining and just kind of, they do one thing and that's it. Like, so, it's the health that it brings you. Like, there's so many benefits
that's so true. And thank you for that wonderful compliment. But I think it's a testament to what is possible, right? We are possible of so much more than we can even dream or realize. Even for myself, when, having these experiences that really exceed even my own dreams and vision. And I'm a big thinker, right? Like, that is our potential to continually expand and stretch ourselves to new levels of growth and light and creativity and health and vibrancy.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Listen, Adora, thank you very much.
Thanks, Roy. Such a great conversation. I loved it. Thank you.
Me too. That's all for the meditation podcast. You can find all our episodes on meditationpodcast.org and also on the Awakening Podcast, awakeningpodcast.org. Until next week, take care.
This podcast is sponsored by Coolabola, creators of websites, animation, and digital art. To get a 10% discount, go to coolabola.com and put in the discount code meditation.